Time now for WADK's Spotlight on Giving with your host, Jane Burns-Ruggiero.
Welcome to Spotlight on Giving. We're here this week with the Huntington's Disease Society of America. And Ashley Wright, you're a board member of the Rhode Island and Massachusetts chapter of that society. And I would like to know what Huntington disease is first before we find out about this nonprofit.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to educate everyone listening about Huntington's disease. It's a very rare genetic disease that most people have not heard about. And so I think it's really important to kind of get the word out there, as we actually don't know how many people in this country are at risk of inheriting this disease.
Oh,
wow. It's a brain disease. It's passed down through generations, families that have the genetic precursor. And if you have a parent that is affected by this disease, you are actually at 50% risk of inheriting this disease. It is often described as having Alzheimer's, which most of us know, ALS, and Parkinson's disease at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It is often described as a neurodegenerative terminal disease without cure. And at the Huntington's disease chapter, we're working really hard to change that. Currently, in the United States, there are 41,000 people who have this, which seems pretty low, but there's over 200,000 people here at risk of inheriting this genetic disease, most of them not knowing that it runs in their family line, which is a really concerning thing.
That is, absolutely. So all those details, how does one find out that they have Huntington's? What are the symptoms of it? What brings them to the doctor to receive this diagnosis?
Oh, absolutely. So it's very variable. The one thing that we've found is that no two people show identical symptoms, and it's really difficult to diagnose. But some of the most common symptoms is something that we call chorea, an uncontrollable jerking or contraction of muscles. It was described actually in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
And only in the 1960s did we figure out that it was linked to this very rare genetic disease. Most people have cognitive issues, memory impairment, aside from this motor issue. And then it typically progresses to having speech difficulty and swallowing difficulty over the course of time. Once you're diagnosed, again, it's very variable, but usually it's a 15 to 20 year prognostication as you progress through these stages. Most people are diagnosed in their 30s or 40s, but that is also a very variable number. And so what people are finding in my family specifically is that they're having these movements that they just can't stop. They're not sure why they're happening. And this is bringing them to the doctors. Of course, if you go to the doctors, they're going to tell you, oh, there's a million things this could be. And so one of the biggest reason people get diagnosed is family history. But as I mentioned, some people don't know this runs in their family.
And no two people are alike.
Exactly.
And testing brings you to genetic testing for diagnosis?
Yeah, so for diagnosis of this disease, it is a genetic test that you would have to have run by a specialist. So there are a few places throughout the country that are called Huntington Disease Centers for Excellence, and they provide an elite team to diagnosis as well as research. There are so many ongoing clinical trials that require funding so we can actually halt this disease from progressing. But diagnosis is really a big deal because oftentimes it is a disease that is so difficult that people contemplate, not wanting to live with this disease. And so, diagnosis is something that's a very personal choice, and it is something that is not done instantly. You can't walk in and say, I'd like to be tested for this. You have to undergo a very thorough workup, including psychological workup, before testing even occurs. And that's for the patient safety and the support system that's required for them to process the information about what this disease means.
Right. All right. Well, that's a lot of information
It's so
already.
much information, yes.
Yes. And so many questions. And I'm going to start with the question of, so tell us more about the Huntington Disease Society of America. When did it form and what is its mission?
So our mission statement at the Huntington Disease Society of America is to literally improve the lives of everyone that is affected by Huntington's disease and their families. Our biggest goal is not only to support people with the disease, but the ripple effect of all of the family members and the community that kind of rally around the people who have this disease. One of the biggest things that we do is we raise funds through many fundraising events. One of the biggest ones that we have here in Rhode Island is the Team Hope Walk, which is every September. And what we do is we raise money in order to sponsor research projects, to support having social workers in the community for people who do have this disease, as well as individual counseling therapists, neurologists. A lot of that money that we've raised is kicked back to those centers for excellence that we mentioned earlier, to really just kind of keep the ball moving forward, so we end up finding, if not a cure, which is our goal, a way to slow the disease progression.
That's great. So tell me about the history. How long has the society been operating or working towards that goal? And you're a board member of the Rhode Island, Massachusetts chapter. So how long have they been a chapter of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, over the last few years, the Rhode Island and Massachusetts chapters have come together. Rhode Island's a very small place, as we all know, and Massachusetts isn't that big in comparison to some of the other states around the nation. So over the last few years, we have combined and made one much stronger chapter. Our old board members have been in place for 20 plus years. The disease itself, I mentioned, was more of a new disease. I don't want to say new as far as, a new disease, but more a new diagnosed disease. Some fun facts.
Probably more understood now than it was previously.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a fun fact about Huntington's disease is, so George Huntington, obviously that's where the name came from, was an American physician in the 1800s. And he was in New York and described in a paper chorea, and that's CHOREA. It's the type of movement that we see in people that typically trigger a diagnosis for this disease. And he described that disease in the 1800s. And hundreds of years later, fast forward to 1872, there was another physician who also kind of looked into this movement. And it wasn't until the 1960s that when medicine became very scientific, it was described and linked to the Huntington's disease, which we now have as the formal name, kind of honoring George Huntington, who described it in the 1800s. And so, I'll tell you, even today, as much as we know and all the advances that we have in medicine, it's a very difficult disease to diagnose.
I can imagine the fact that it's genetically diagnosed, that the symptoms related to the disease have got to mirror others which
Absolutely.
have to make it difficult.
Of course.
And I have personal interests in genetic disorders and medical misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
Ashley, you have shared so much about the disease itself, about your organization. And I had a question. You had mentioned that you had an upcoming event, the Teens Hope Walk.
Yes, I'm so happy that you asked. So the Team Hope Walk is our largest national fundraising event for the Huntington's Disease Society. It takes place in over 100 cities around the U.S., and we have an event coming up here in Rhode Island on September 25th at Colt State Park, which you could register for. Thousands of families and friends, coworkers, neighbors, community members all walk together and support the Huntington's Disease Society's mission to improve the lives of people affected by this disease. You can form a team, you can sponsor the event, volunteer, just to make a difference in so many people's lives. If anyone would like to join us walking, you can actually register at the Mass RI chapter. I can give you that website. It's massri.hdsa.org.
All right. Give me that one more time.
Yeah, of course. It's Mass RI, so massri.hdsa.org.
It's fantastic. All right. So the walk is on September 25th at Colt State Park. What time of day does it occur?
Yeah, so registration starts at 10 a.m. and the walk starts promptly at 11. Anyone listening, you still have plenty of time to make a team, get your family together, and raise some funds for such an important cause that is not well known or well supported in this nation. And it's really important that we change that.
Yes, absolutely. It sure does sound like that. So how far of a walk is it?
That's a good question. So we never pressure anyone. Typically, it's like around 1.5 miles to 2 miles at each venue.
Mm-hmm.
At Colt State Park, it's so beautiful. You can walk halfway and turn around. If you aren't able to walk, as I mentioned, we have plenty of people with motor disability there, lots of family members. Only walk as far as you can go. There's no pressure. We have people that run it, like my teenage daughter, who's very fit, and then me, who kind of hangs on the sidelines and cheers everyone on. So there's no limitation.
That's great. And you do need volunteers.
We do. We're always looking for new volunteers. Volunteers for this event and many of the other events that we have across the East Coast. We have tons of events that we try to change and keep fresh. This last year, we had a Jeopardy Gala, which was so much fun. But we are always looking for volunteers to volunteer at the events themselves. Mm-hmm. And we're always looking to grow our board members. Having the most hands on board at all times is super important to us. So you could actually volunteer remotely if this is something that someone listening would be interested in. And to hear about all of those potential opportunities or how to get involved, mm-hmm. You just can go on the Mass RI website. Yeah. And there's very user-friendly buttons that you can click to get involved.
Great. So the website sounds like it's pretty in-depth, has a lot of opportunities there. Can you share with us maybe some of the other things on your website?
Of course. So there are so many things on our website, including support for people affected by this disease. But there's a lot of take action parts of this website. There's a lot of legislation that's in the works and a lot of bills that need people to advocate for them. And so by logging onto the website, you can help support with, the advocacy parts. Mm-hmm. You can get involved with volunteering, and you can add anything, in your personal wheelhouse to help support the research opportunities. Over the last 5 years, we have figured out different ways to potentially delay the onset of these disease with community members getting involved. And so there's a vast variety of things on this website where you can get involved and take action in whatever capacity that works for you.
That's it's great to hear. I often ask the question, what can your volunteers do for you? And I think many of our listeners and myself too need to look at what our assets are. What can we offer to somebody? I know back in the day, mailings were a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And nonprofits that I worked for would give mailings to volunteers to stuff and fold and, put stamps on. And times have changed. I know email has become a lot. But people with computer skills can help as well. So there's so many opportunities for volunteers to help an organization. I'm glad that you presented it that way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we have people who volunteer their trucks for the walk to put items in and move. We have people that own small businesses that, donate food to us and water. Mm-hmm. Small things like that make such a big difference in organizations like this one.
It absolutely does. I always say that I can't afford to support all the nonprofits that I want to in the world, so I try to give my hands and my mind to them, and sometimes my mouth here on the station. But you know what? Sometimes that's more valuable than the monetary donations that we can't all afford to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So so you have great events every year, and that information is all on your website?
It is, and there are plenty of events in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, so location should not be a problem if you're interested in getting involved. And again, some of those opportunities are remote. So if you just visit the Mass RI website, again, I'm going to give it to you one more time.
Great.
It's massri.hdsa.org. You're going to find a ton of information on how to get involved there.
Fantastic. So what else can you share with us?
Oh, I have so many things. I could keep you here all day.
Oh, keep going then. We got time.
I think one of the most important things that I would just like to reiterate or share is that you, as a person, and I think you personally had mentioned this, you never know what tomorrow's going to bring and what you could potentially be at risk for. And so supporting others through these times are really, really important. Every donation that is made towards this chapter goes directly back to the Huntington's Disease Society of America community. And it's the only way that we can really move the mark through donations of any sort to try to find a cure for this terminal illness. And so the one thing that I would like to share is that even though we're a very small community, we're a very mighty community, and we can assure you that you'll fit in some way. You will fit into this organization, even if it's not you that's directly affected. You can relate to everybody in our community in some way. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important for people in our small communities to rally, to get involved. We have, again, plenty of events. Like I mentioned, there's a few upcoming events in Massachusetts I would just like to highlight. So that Team Hope Walk, we are having here in Rhode Island on September 25th at Colt State Park, which is so beautiful, starting at 10 a.m. But there's also a walk in Lowell. They are having their Team Hope Walk on October 22nd. You can find that information on the website. And then lastly, if you didn't hear enough from me today already, we're having an education day. It's actually a hybrid event, so you can tune in on a Zoom link, which we will share on the website, or you can come to the Village Club in Needham in November and hear more information about Huntington's disease and how you can potentially get involved. The last piece I would like to mention is we have amazing donations and auction items that are available for all events. And I have to say, the local sports teams, the Red Sox, the Patriots, all of those teams have been super great at donating to us. And so if you're interested in trying to get some cool auction items, we have a pretty good slew at each event.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, and with local business listeners, there's potential that they could support you through making donations for?
Yeah, we would love that. So local businesses are our sponsorships. It's how we can do really anything. Each walk or event is supported by local sponsors. There's a way that you can get involved with that on the website. And if you do get involved, you get your name on the back of our T-shirts. You can have a table at one of our events, which, it benefits your business as well because we have big events. And so we are in need and would love to have any local sponsors in whatever capacity that they can join our team.
That's great. So I want to wish you well with the walk, your other events. The educational event sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, very different. I've not heard an educational event before from other organizations related to health, so that's very interesting. And but good luck with the walk. Good luck in the future, and I wish well to all those affected as well as research.
Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be here today to try to get the word out.
Well, thank you for coming.